Hello, and thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of the React Mobile New World New Safety Culture webcast series. My name is Rob Monkman, and joining us today is Chris Horn, the VP of Operations at 60 Hotels. He is a seasoned hospitality professional with over 12 years of experience in luxury resorts and lifestyle brands. In the past, Chris has played a key role in repositioning the James Hotel brand, led a flagship property launch in New York City, streamlining efficiency projects, and diversifying revenue streams. He works closely with properties to develop and shape their future and has come to share details about safety at 60 Hotels. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Chris, 60 Hotels has a unique tagline, always open. What's the company culture like at 60 Hotels, and why are you always open in good times and in bad times like we're experiencing right now?
Absolutely. So I think company culture-wise, I think that it plays to the core of who we are and why we're in the business we're in. You know, hoteliers around the world are in the passion business of service. And ultimately, service is not only in those times where everything's going great and guests want to come and have a wonderful time and spend the most money and everybody sells out and everybody's happy. You know, I think a true hotelier knows that at the core of what they do and the core of their heart is service and the passion for that. And, you know, what better time than to remain open at a time when those need us most, as a shelter over their head, a place where they can rest, and that's what we stand for.
Wow. So tell me, has remaining open been worth it? Tell me about your occupancy and who it is that you're attracting today and why.
Yeah, so I think the most fascinating thing has been, it has absolutely, first and foremost, it's absolutely been worth it staying open. You know, I challenge all hoteliers to do as much as they can, flex as much as they can, and adapt quickly in this environment, because that's how you're going to be successful. And I think we number one, did the numbers financially to understand what it would mean to close. We looked at it from multiple lenses, from financial ones to branding ones to overall ethos of our company. And ultimately, we found that there was a need. There was a true need for individuals to serve the community, serve the Lower East Side, serve Soho, serve Beverly Hills, and also to serve those individuals that were not from the community that were coming in to help support the effort to curb the pandemic here in New York City specifically. So business-wise, it's been very evolving. It's really been a period where transition has been the constant, and your segmentation will shift week by week for truly who's occupying your guest rooms. You know, in the beginning of it, we began to see pace go backwards, truthfully, as many hoteliers did. Cancellations began piling up. People were fearful to travel, and rightfully so, given the environment. And we kind of began to reach out and put feelers out for the larger community need, which was really housing first responders and being a resource where those individuals could work their long shifts, doubles, triples, 6-7 days without even going home to see family and have a place to rest their head. And we did that for a solid 2.5 months to be a part of that service to the New York Emergency Management Services. And then we transitioned right back into being transient business. So, you know, all in the last 2 months has been fully transient. And it's a lot of people that just want to get away, right? And, you know, there are people that, even the most recent storm, for example, that just happened last week or 2 weeks ago now, we have displaced individuals that had floods in their houses, had different electrical issues at their houses from the hurricane that came through, and they've held up with us since then. So I think, you know, to stay nimble and to stay agile during this time frame is really what's driven our success from a business perspective as well as an occupancy one.
Wow. Well, hats off to you for serving the first responders and everyone who's really on the front lines there. Did initially hosting first responders better prepare you to serve your guests today? And what did you learn from that experience?
Without a doubt. You know, I give all the kudos, the respect, the hats off to our teams here on the ground. They are the difference makers. It is not me. It is not a one person. It's the unit. It's the team. And I've never been more proud of seeing the people that I work alongside step up to the plate and truly be heroes. You know, they were working just as long hours as the first responders working in hospitals were, and doing in many senses, from what nurses and doctors shared with us, just as an important job, right? Because we were supporting them and they were supporting patients. So, from that angle, it's a full team effort. I will say it did wonders to get us prepared for where we are now with high volume transient business. We had from the onset, we had a medical team in here analyzing our entire operation. We ran through everything from how an individual enters the building, what they touch, where they enter through, what their keys look like, all of those items, down to kind of where they were going to use hand sanitizer, when they were not, how many feet of separation in between corridors for the back of the house and front of the house. It ran the gamut. What our HVAC units were like, what our methods were for dropping guest amenities off, how we adapted those, how we adapted room change policies, how we adapted even guest amenity requests and how they were dropped off. During that period where we had our first responders, we did limit contact as much as possible, for a mutual effect, right? Because they were servicing those that were in need, many of which were either immunocompromised or had some critical issue that they had to remain healthy for. And then, of course, on our side, our staff needed to obviously be safe in their jobs. So we really went about the process of creating a very minimal touch, but open heart philosophy to how we managed and serviced our guests. And I think it's done wonders to prepare us for now where we are. And I'm proud to say that we're able to reach occupancy levels safely that I think other operators may be able to or have to ramp up to, because there are a lot of intricacies and complexities in the process of doing it right in order to ensure the safety of others.
Wow, it's really impressive that you actually had a medical team walk through your facility to ensure that you've got the right guidelines in place, both for your guests and your employees. But maybe we can focus on the employees a little bit. Tell us what's going on in New York City around thoughts around the pandemic. Are there fears of a spike? And obviously, always being open is great for your guests, but how is it impacting the safety of your employees?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, that was kind of checkbox number one when we thought about remaining open. We do not function without our team. The asset does not function, and we cannot bring this experience to our guests. We can't bring it alive without them. So truthfully, they are the heart of what we do here. They're the heart of hospitality and service, and they are the most important part. So when we first discussed opening, or remaining open, I should say, it certainly was all about how we limit exposure. I'm happy to say that, as it turned out, and we kind of had our own thoughts about this because of how much testing was going on for first responders during this period of time, that we believe they would actually have a much lower infection rate than the general public. And that turned out to be 100% accurate. Coming out of Governor Cuomo essentially did a whole speech once we got through the thick of it, going through almost each department, from police officers to first responders to EMTs to hospital nurses and doctors, and their infection rates were sometimes half of that of the general public. So it really, quite transparently, it was probably the safest guest that we could have had during that period of time. But that being said, it was something that we were extremely mindful of. We set up every apparatus that we could to ensure their safety, from limiting, essentially doing no contact hospitality, where they were not entering occupied guest rooms, they were not interacting directly with staff members or with guests without either a plexiglass screen or 6 feet of distance. All amenity drops were done blindly with follow-up calls. We systematically changed how we operated because of the environment, and I'm proud to say we championed it as a team, as a unit, and it changed weekly, right? This is the first time myself and I'd say pretty much 100% of the people ever went through a pandemic here in the U.S., and information came very slowly because of that. It was ever changing, and sometimes too much information from just sources that it would turn out not to be accurate or what have you. So we had to sift through it. We had to work intelligently as a team on the hotel side, and then also work with our medical professionals and our liaisons that we had to really say, this is our plan. It has phases to it. So we did essentially 3 phases to our operation. The most severe phase obviously was when we were in the midst of the pandemic, and that involved pretty much no contact. And the hope is, as we get forward through, we'll go to phase 2, phase 1, And much like our ability for our states to have phases and reopenings, that was our philosophy from the jump, and it's worked out quite well.
So I've heard, a lot of hotels, when we talk about new guidelines and new procedures, how have you revamped your room turn processes, your employee health screening processes, just anything in addition to the standard PPE items that, we see at hotels or other businesses. How is that working for you today?
Absolutely. So one of the first things that we did was we built out a self-health assessment form and process to our entry and exit of our associates. For us, that was very strategic. We limited entrance and exit to one location, so systematically funneling all of the activity into a controlled space. We heavily sanitized that entire area and the access points down to our back-of house locations where the associates would be changing and getting ready for their day. They would be screened for temperature prior to their entrance into the building. They would fill out a health assessment alongside one of the managers, kind of indicating that they didn't have any of the symptoms, as well as that they passed that temperature check. And then they were provided access downstairs into the back of house. And we essentially kind of cut out the traditional stand-ups that you would have in the morning, and we moved to much more digital in concept. Using communication tools like Beekeeper and others, we're really able to do a lot of things via Wi-Fi on mobile applications, such as old school, I guess you could say, even though it's only a couple years, iPods that connect to Wi-Fi and have apps based on them that essentially they're given their entire daily briefing digitally, so that there's no need to have 6-8 people in one given room. And we did everything from limit the times that each individual was on premises. So, shifts were staggered to ensure that multiple individuals were not showing up at the same time for that temperature screen, because even that was a process where, when you think about it, where 5-6 room attendants would come in all at the same time, and that poses a risk to proper social distancing. So there's a lot of things processes that we had to put in play and think very intricately, if you will, about the process. Room turn wise, we did go into multiple phases of room turns as well. So in the very beginning of the pandemic, when we were in the worst of it, you could say, we essentially had a process where a guest would depart and that room was not touched for 24 hours. Then that room was entered into by an associate that was wearing proper PPE, a house person, and that room was thoroughly disinfected with essentially a pressure sprayer with EPA-approved product for COVID-19, for killing the virus. That room was then sealed back off and not touched for an additional 24 hours, and then that room at that time would be serviced by one of our room attendants with proper PPE as well. So, we did have really a process where nobody was entering that room as a guest for 72 hours, essentially, which really provided us with an opportunity to ensure the safety of our team as well as of the next guest that would be occupying that room. Since then, we have shortened that as the pandemic has gotten better. We've shortened that time frame down, and the hope is we continue to do so until we're operating normally again. But I think this has all taught us that technology and the ability to kind of adapt and do things differently and use new chemical technologies and new sprayer technologies that were not previously used in the past will only advance hotels as we go into the next phase of what is hospitality industry.
That's so impressive. Let's talk about tech a little bit further, just because that's my space, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are really interested in talking about this. Are there any other solutions you're investing in to help keep your employees safe, and why, and how's that working for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So a big one that we've started since all this, almost 2 years now since I came here, was Beekeeper. I will say I think it's a phenomenal tool. It's really allowed not only our individual assets to express and collaborate with each other, but it's also allowed us to be able to talk to Soho or LES to be able to talk to Beverly Hills, right? And empathize, promote, celebrate what each other is doing during this tough time. And I think, there's something to be said for that from a morale perspective that truly is incredible. We use No Cross for all of our back of house systems here, specifically at LES, that we found to be incredibly helpful. The organization is really flexible in the way that they adapted with us during these times. We are in the midst of installing self-check-in terminals at each one of our 3 locations, and we're just about through the process of the integrations to do that from a technical perspective. So we're really excited. That is kind of that next phase that I'm talking about in terms of hospitality. And it doesn't have to be the only way, right? I think in person is the power of service, right? And the power of hospitality really is the interactions and the connections you get. But, I think giving options to our guests is really where we should be, as just a global movement. I think there's something empowering about being able to meet your traveler wherever they are, in comfortability level, in communication platforms. So I think we're trying to get there, and we're making some big steps to do it. And I'm very proud of kind of the work we've been able to do. We even kind of went through the process with QR codes, so all of our menus at our F&B establishments are all digitized now. So essentially, you just go ahead and take a photo of that QR and bring up our menu on the websites. And some of our partners that we're working with within our F&B venues at the hotels are even using Bot for online ordering and taking. So it's really limiting even further exposure while they kind of enjoy their meal, their beverages and meals outside right now, as is mandated. And then, finally on the associate side, we are pushing forward with React Mobile. We're really excited about it. It's not just a push here, but it has been something that, you can attest to this, that we've been working with you guys for, since last year on and making sure that it's set up the way we want it and it integrates properly with our systems. And in the environment we're in now, ever more so than we have ever been in, there's a need to be able to ensure the health and wellness and safety of our associates at all times. And that could be for a multitude of reasons, from health to just being able to have somebody that's there as their support on demand should they need it. And we're kind of proud to answer that call, and I think proud to move forward in that next step for our teams.
When we look back to, let's say, March timeframe, I don't think any of us would have expected that this pandemic would have dragged on for so long. It's obviously had a tremendous negative impact on the hospitality and hotel industry. When do you believe in your heart of hearts that the industry will really begin to see this light at the end of the tunnel? And how will we all fare when this is all over?
Right. So I think, I guess it's a two-part answer. I think ultimately we're all going to fare great. The hospitality space is full of really hardworking, dedicated people. Few and far between have I met harder working people than in the restaurant, F&B, and hotel world in my life. And that's just a true, honest statement. People cut their teeth in this industry, and they really get in the thick of it because it's a passion. And I think anytime you put a passion up against an obstacle, you're going to break it down every time. So I'm confident that we're going to see new highs in the future. I do think that it's a rocky road ahead. I think that the next 6 to 12 months is going to be really defining for us as an industry to understand how we kind of approach recovery. And I think that it could go one of two ways, depending on how some of it from a governmental perspective, we rise to the occasion, and some of it from our industry perspective and how we rise to the occasion. And I think there's that we're both dependent on each other, truthfully. 1 in 10 people from a lot of the stats I see is in the hospitality industry. So it is extremely impactful to the overall GDP and to our nation. So I think it is something that should be on top of mind for everybody. My kind of growing suspicion is that people will begin to adopt a little bit of what New York has been doing, and that's my hope. They've been, systematically approaching it, taking emotions out of it, taking politics out of it, going at the numbers and having those base their decisions on how to continue phased reopening, and I think it's working. There's not anybody that could deny it is. It is not. So, I think as we move forward, New York is in a very good spot. We just heard yesterday that there's some guidance proposed on how gyms can even begin to reopen for New York, which is obviously, helpful news. I think there's a lot to that, a lot of meat on the bone to peel back the layers, so to speak, to be able to actually go ahead and operate. There's a lot of guidelines to meet, but I think those are first steps, right? And they're promising ones, and they show that the industry is pushing forward, whether it be gyms, whether it be movie theaters, whether it be hotels. I think it's all kind of in that same orbit, if you will, of service. And I think as we kind of learn how to combat this thing and how to do it in a responsible way, I think it will only open the gates more for all of our organizations. But, I do believe the next 6 to 12 is going to be quite rocky, and, we're going to get through it because that's what we do.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much for joining us today, for sharing such wonderful insights. Hats off to you, to 60 hotels, and thank you for highlighting how hotels really can stay safe while staying open. For all of our viewers, I'm Rob Monkman. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, Rob.